Alright guys, today I want to have a chat about story in games. Today's video is about a wee indie game called Hyper Light Drifter and the art of environmental storytelling. Video games are, through their very nature, able to offer unique narrative experiences that can't really be found in other traditional forms of media. When watching a film or reading a book, you're taken along a linear path, and everybody experiences it in the exact same way. However, in video games, players control the pacing. It's part of what makes games so very different and so very special as a medium. For example, in a scary movie, you get to watch somebody walk down the spooky corridor. And the film's designed to ramp up the tension, so that you feel on edge watching this person creep down. But eventually they will get down the corridor, and then they get super murdered. But in a game like Dead Space, you have to be the one to walk down the spooky corridor. And here's where it gets interesting. Because the players set the pacing, different people will approach the same situation in different ways. So, if you're a big hard bastard, you might just tank on down the corridor, running full sprint at whatever nightmarish beastie is waiting for you. But if, like me, you're a bit of a wimp, you might have to build up to it, taking it slow, which in itself just ramps up the tension even more. Either way, it's up to you to push your character through the worlds that they inhabit, and willing designers can take full advantage of this, filling their worlds with stories hidden away, just waiting to be uncovered by the player. If you took a poll and asked everyone what the greatest game openings of all time were, I'd put serious money down that BioShock would come pretty close to the top of that list. It's not the flashiest or most bombastic opening to a game, but it definitely sits as one of the most memorable. Certainly, this has a lot to do with the climate of games at the time. You know, mid-2000s, the shooter was indeed king, but while the rest of the market was focused on the gritty and the grey, BioShock immediately drew attention with its unique Art Deco aesthetics. But pretty visuals don't sell a game alone. In fact, it was BioShock's unique world that drew people in. From the opening of the game, where your plane goes down in a wreckage, to stepping out of the bathysphere and into Rapture for the first time, you as the player have already learned so much about the world. And yes, you do get some of this information from Andrew Ryan in a pre-recorded message, but this gives little away about the world, other than that he is the architect of this secret city. It's when he stops talking and the window of your bathysphere opens, then you get to see out into the water and glimpse Rapture for the first time. This is what players remember. Here's where you'll start piecing together bits of information. The adverts for seemingly impossible powers, sparks and maintenance going on in the city, the disturbing quietness of the whole thing. And then you get into Rapture proper. Lights are flickering, shouting is heard in the distance, and in front of your eyes a murder takes place at the hands of a deranged yet superhuman woman. You're 3 minutes into the game and already you understand the tale of Rapture. A paradise lost. The Soulsborne series is another which embraces this environmental storytelling to build its worlds. Blood-Borne is personally my favourite example of this. The game starts by lulling you into this false sense of familiarity, with what is essentially a hunt for the big bad wolf through Victorian London. However, the more you play, the more you'll slowly see the setting morph and change into this terrible eldritch nightmare. And this doesn't just happen by moving through the game and exploring new areas. The whole world is affected by the events that occur. Go back to earlier areas and the enemies just mutate and get creepier and nastier looking, changing dynamically with the story, altering with the events of the game. It's a game and a series that is so much about how it makes you feel when you play it. Unease, dread, and even revulsion. All communicated through the places you go to and the things that you encounter. Both Bioshock and Blood-Borne are extremely effective in their world building. They naturally allow the player to come to their own conclusions about the characters that they meet, and they let you hunt out small hidden stories that are squirreled away into the wee corners of their games. In these games, they pair these dense surroundings with more traditional means of storytelling. In Bioshock, you've got these audio logs to give you more flavour to the world, and also a two-way radio. There's a bit of a disconnect there, because for living in a fallen city, there isn't half a bunch of chatty guys kicking about. Chat the whole time. Just audio logs left everywhere, just at your arse. I love Bioshock, but just occasionally, I wish it would just leave you alone for a bit. Just sometimes. And let you just experience the world that's been created for you. Blood-Borne, on the other hand, opts for the same approach as the other Souls games. It leaves wee scraps and bits of information about its world and its characters, all within the item descriptions in the game. And then it wants you to stitch them together, putting the story together like some mad detective or one of them boards with the strings. It's mental. Fascinating, but crazy. But what if even those narrative devices were stripped away? What if you played a game where nobody spoke to you? Where nothing was written down for you to read? A game where you get dropped into a world and asked to just peel out its narrative while being greeted with silence. Enter Hyper Light Drifter. In Hyper Light Drifter, you begin the game with an opening cinematic. Nothing is clear, it plays out like some mad fever dream. There's a city, some gems, an explosion, and then the Drifter is sick, and some nasty black thing is after him. Big, scary looking robots scream, and then die, and fade into the wind. A dog, that looks not unlike the Egyptian god Anubis, sits with the Drifter in a lake of blood, and a tower shoots from this. The doors open, and the Drifter steps in. Despite struggling against the darkness, the Drifter is consumed by it. And then you wake. Coming to and getting control of the character for the first time, you're probably thinking, huh? And to be fair, you'd be right. Maybe it was all a bad dream. So, you take your first steps. And promptly cough up blood. So you are sick. And then, as you sit and admire the frankly astounding pixel art, you notice something in the background. What might appear at first to be islands in a lake might be feet. And then you see what must be a giant blade behind it. So this is one of those robots. But the Earth is reclaiming it. It must have shut down ages ago. So now, with a head of questions, you step out into the world. Now this is the point in any other game where tutorial guy shows up and goes, "Alright pal, take a seat because here's the plot." But that never happens in Hyper Light Drifter. Instead you piece together what you can from some pictures that are shown to you. And while beautiful, it's not always exactly clear what the characters are trying to say to you. Shortly after the beginning of the game, you'll arrive at the centre of a city. The outskirts all around are desolate and abandoned. What remains of civilization has crowded in the centre of the town. You'll also learn that there are 4 things to reach at the edges of the world, and from town, 4 directions to go. There's no guide on which way to go first, why you need to go, or what you're trying to do. All you know is, you are dying, the Titans are dead, and the remnants of the population are huddled together. Survivors in an otherwise empty land. So you pick a direction, and you step out. Each of the 4 main sections of the world has its own narrative to unravel. These areas not only tell their own stories, but also feed into your understanding of the world as a whole, to demonstrate how well this game executes its narrative design without ever speaking to you. I'm going to talk to you about just one of these areas. The western route out of town brings you to a lush forest. Now, it starts off fairly standard. It's a pretty pixel forest. There's auburn trees and twinkling green shards in them. There are some forest creatures who are aggressive but easy enough to deal with. And then you start seeing these crystals show up, small at first. What initially seems like just some game design so that you can get an infinite supply of bullets slowly reveals itself to be part of the story. Next you'll come across enemies who seem to have been affected by these crystals. Wolves come at you with pieces of the crystal jutting out of them like they've cut themselves on it or it's been stuck in them. It makes them really aggressive. And then further into the forest you'll find creatures encased in the crystal itself. And the further in you go, the more it seems to spread. The bigger the crystals are, the more real estate they take up. And the creatures that are encased seem to behave in different ways as well. Sometimes the creatures will burst forth and attack you, and it's almost like the crystals have let them go. But the ones that don't burst forth, you can go up and try and break them free, but they just die. It's almost like the crystals can pick who to release or who not to. It's got this feel like it's a bacteria or a virus. You get the impression that they're just multiplying and spreading throughout this forest, slowly taking it over. And then from there, you see sentient creatures made out of the crystal. Small and simple at first, little spider-looking things. But as you progress further, they become behemoths for you to tangle with. This all comes to an end when you reach the boss at the end of the zone. Here you can see the crystals have fully infected the guy, creating this half-biological, half-crystal hybrid. And it seems to have driven him insane, because he attacks you on sight. To say any more would be to spoil the experience for anyone yet to play it. But I would recommend you do. I would recommend anyone check out this little gem. Hyper Light Drifter is a superb game with challenging reactive gameplay and an excellent visual and audio presentation. But more than that, it's a mystery, and one that begs you to unfold it without ever whispering you a word. Thanks for watching. If anything I've said in this video interests you at all, I would really encourage you to go out and give Hyper Light Drifter a shot. It's like 12 quid, so you've not that much of an excuse. It's not that long, it's like 8 hours I think on my first playthrough. But just go on, you'll love it. It's got a wee bit of Zelda to it, it's a wee bit of Studio Ghibli in there, it's a wee bit brilliant. Until next time guys, cheerio.